Good evening, guys. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Hey, Adam G, your online Intersectional talk show. Tonight, I'll be talking to another Miss Universe Philippines candidate. For me, her growth has been really remarkable here in the Miss Universe Philippines pageant this year, as she has blossomed right in front of our eyes. From her early days in pageantry to where she is at right now, her trajectory, the trajectory of her pageant career has been stunning to say the least. Yep. So let's get to know her more and take a closer look at her transformation, because I feel like her transformation here in Miss Universe Philippines could lay the groundwork for her impending glory. So here she is, live. Please say hello to Miss Universe Philippines, Miss Oriental 2022, Annabelle McDonnell. Hi, Annabelle.
Hi, good evening, Sir Adam. Hi. And hello to all our viewers. It's really great to be here. Hope you guys are doing absolutely fantastic this week.
Thank you so much, Annabelle. You don't know how you are making me so happy with this interview. I've been waiting for you to say yes to this interview, and then finally, I'm so happy na your schedule finally opened up for this interview. So maraming salamat again
No,
for
thank you. I mean,
taking the
it's
time
really,
and effort in doing this
I mean,
interview.
after watching so many episodes, it's really nice to be on the screen live. So, for a change.
Ganun ba yun? Thank
Oo.
you, thank you. So wait, let's engage some of our viewers who are watching us right now.
Sure, sure.
Good evening, sabi ni Eileen Velasco. We have been waiting for this interview. Please shout out naman po all the way from Saudi Arabia, sabi ni Vina.
Hello.
From Ace Anonia, you're my personal favorite. Dark Horse in Miss Universe Philippines. Maayong gabi sa tanan, sabi ni Matthew. And then Jane Lou is saying, ang ganda ni Annabelle right now.
Pero also, or as we say in Bisaya, pero buyan.
Yeah. Say that again. Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Oh, I said pero usog. He's just giving me But in Bisaya, we say pero buyag.
Oh, all right. So, how are you right now? How have you been feeling all the love and support that you have received since the meet and greet of Miss Universe Philippines 2 weeks ago?
Yeah, I mean, I'm really overwhelmed by, the feedback that I've gotten since the press con. I mean, I didn't really anticipate it. I mean, I just showed up and hope for the best. And yeah, I'm really just glad that I was received very well, and particularly with comments to my styling. I'm just so thankful that I think the pageant fans finally approve of the styling choices I made. And I'd really like to thank Kuya Jermaine Nabong, who designed my violet ensemble. It
Yeah.
was really inspired by Misamis Oriental's rich culture with the bell bead details, and the coconut bag that I had at the time.
Is purple by your favorite color? Because you also wore the same color during your yung International Women's Day video nyo, where you sported
Yeah,
curls.
it's amongst my favorite colors because it symbolizes sovereignty. And I think um, going into this competition, you need to know your own power, and then know that you have the capacity to draw out that power when you need to. So that's the story behind the violet that you've been seeing a lot.
So, pwedeng purple or violet ang color ng evening gown mo.
Who knows? Who
Sa
knows?
prelims or sa finals. Pero alam mo, sa totoo lang, Annabelle, you don't know talaga how you really made me happy when you finally submitted your application form online. Especially, I've been putting your name on my wish list, on my Miss Universe Philippines wish list since before the pandemic started pa. So now it's a reality.
Yeah, I mean, after my last pageant, I was really flattered to make it to your MUP wish list, and I guess this year I finally decided to listen to you. But yeah, I mean, in all seriousness, I think um, I'm 21, and I think I have the more healthier mindset coming into a pageant on this scale. I think I feel that I'm more prepared, and considering that I'm not going into this pageant alone, and that I have my mas who have my
Yeah.
back, and the avid support of all the pageant fans so far, and the support of our governor of Misamis Oriental. I mean, I think that um, that's really thrusted me towards being and bidding for Miss Universe Philippines this time around.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you are a good follow-up to some of your fellow kababayans or fellow provincial mates who really made a huge impression in the pageant scene lately, like Cindy Ombinita, and now si Caroline Ventura, who was Miss Universe Philippines Misamis Oriental 2 years ago. So alam mo yon, iba eh. Iba eh. Alam mo, guys ha, I don't know if the
Thank you.
guys
I mean,
watching us right now, the viewers watching us right now could agree. Guys, so tignan nyo naman, no? Tignan nyo si Annabelle. Iso-solo shot ko muna, ha? Iba yung ano eh, may something talaga eh. May dating eh, may charisma. Alam mo yun, pumipiya yung charisma niya.
thank
Do you
you.
agree
I
with
mean,
me, guys? I mean, iba eh. So, tanungin lang kita, light lang, what's the secret behind your charisma right now? Iba. I'm telling you, it's not, it's not, I'm really telling you genuinely, you really have that something or yung it factor na I can't explain that. Once we see you, especially in person, talagang, wow, look at her. That's what I really felt with you when we finally saw each other during the meet and greet. Anong secret ng charisma mo?
I'm not sure if I do have charisma, but thank you so much. If you think that I do have it, I guess I just try to be myself as much as possible. I mean, I've always stayed true to myself, and I guess that helps me become more comfortable in my own skin, and also just enjoy every moment as it comes. I think it's very important because we tend to be anxious, or we tend to be caught up when we think about so many things in the long run. But just enjoying the moment. Um, so far in my experience has been really rewarding, to say the least, because
Yeah.
of all that I've gotten. But beyond external validation as well, I feel fulfilled when I'm myself. I couldn't be anybody else, really.
Hindi ka lang nag excel sa online challenges, pero nung nakita ka namin talaga sa personal, kasi ganito yun, after the event, all my fellow pressers and I compared notes, o sino yung nag-stand out sa inyo? And yung common denominator namin lahat, ikaw. Kaya na ano ko, in-Instagram ko talaga na parang, if the pageant were held today, Annabelle would have won this. Parang may ganun ako. Parang ganun yung impact mo. Sobra.
You know, flattered. I was immensely flattered by that. Thank you so much for those kind words. But I guess that's not a guarantee of anything. It doesn't guarantee anything yet. I won't let it um,
Maybe
impede
it
upon or clips how I'm going into it. As what I've said, I just like to take it moment by moment, and I need to do my best each and every time. So there's that.
Oo, sabi dito ni Jace Joy Solis, yes, ang ganda, ganda niya talaga, Sir Adam. She is my bet, beauty and brains combined. Ang fresh ni Ate Annabelle, sana always po ganyan. Sabi ni Tia Milty, I see Megan Young in her. Yeah, yeah, at some angles, yes. And Vinya also agree. Maybe siguro the reason why, people are really noticing you is because probably of your stance, poise, bearing brought by your past pageant experiences. 'Di ba? Like yung nilist down ko dito sa ticker tape. And siguro ako talaga ha, kaya kita nilalagay sa wishlist palagi is because yung nakita kong performance sa'yo nung Miss Millennial 2019. 'Di ba? Nung Itbulaga. So, I wonder, how different is that pageant from your present stint in Miss Universe Philippines right now?
I guess the main difference would have to be the mindset that I'm going into it. I mean, within my Miss Millennial stint, I genuinely surprised myself. I didn't imagine myself that I would make it that far into the competition. Um, so I was just trying to enjoy it, and at the same time, I do have to admit that as an adolescent rather, you tend to fixate on things that you need to improve on, but and you need to and especially me, I tend to hyper focus on things that I can improve on. But going into MUP now, I think I've really done my part when it comes to preparation. I'm more prepared this time around, and I've learned from my past mistakes throughout pageantry, and with each pageant that I've joined, you learn a thing or two, and I think the culmination of that will be evident come this Miss Universe Philippines. Um, but also, Siguro, when it comes to the platform,
Oh,
Miss
right.
Universe obviously has a wider platform, but at the same time, I really love that it's not just focused on our roots, or where we're coming from, but also the causes and where we're going towards. Um, and I'd really like to imbibe that, or really get to connect more with the platform, and hopefully steer it in a direction that I want to in the future. If you know
Yeah,
what I mean.
I agree. I agree with the platform. Pero I want to ask, more importantly, uh, how did you know it was the right timing for you to join this year from being a second runner-up of that TV competition back in 2019? What made you
First of
push
all,
to join Miss Universe Philippines na this year?
it was really the circumstances that I thrusted myself into, coming into it just fresh from my victory at the Miss Kuyamis 2022 pageant. And from there, considering that I now had the immense opportunity and the opportunity to be supported in a national pageant, but at the same time, um, I don't know, that there's just something that I can feel in my gut that it would be the right time and it would be the right decision to partake in this pageant now. And considering that also, I'm more attuned with myself. I've done a lot of soul searching throughout this pandemic, and I can. I think it's time to really represent something beyond me, to represent people that have been, pushed on the sides or have been marginalized. I know that now part of my purpose, my existential purpose would really have to be pushing people from the margins to the center stage of, conversations. And that's what I'd really like to do come by this pageant.
I like.
It's really about finding my purpose. I think I have really found it, and if at the end of my life, I'd really deeply regret if I didn't do or contribute to anything that took away from contributing towards making things more inclusive in society.
May something kang sinabi doon eh. May something kang sinabi about, about, wait, this clanking sound is, oh wait, may sinabi ka tungkol dun sa being, you wanna, you joined this because of the platform, because somehow you've felt that you've been pushed back and been isolated. Now it's your time to pay it forward by pushing people, to achieve their potential or growth, 'di ba? So I wonder, does this come from personal experience? Kasi watch your Kumu video, when we watch your Kumu video and yung interview challenge mo the other day, you spoke so many things. It's as if you gave us this impression that you led a very difficult childhood. Because you mentioned there that you've been fighting for your rights ever since 15 years old. Wow, that was such a loaded statement.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. I guess it does also come from personal experience because I genuinely know what it's like to have your voice silenced and to be pushed towards situations wherein you need to set your foot down in order to take control of your life and to really assert that your rights are enjoyed and 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 really in control, like you're really in control of your life. It really got to a point wherein if I did not raise my voice, if I did not use it, I would have completely had it robbed from me, and I have would have
Oh,
no idea where I'd be now in my life if I didn't summon the bravery, um, and really forge my spine into like the steel that it is now. I think that was the moment that I really had to grow up and
yeah. I could
really
imagine. I could really imagine.
put my hands on the reins on my existence. But I can just imagine how I was still privileged, even when I hit rock bottom, financially and emotionally speaking. I still had the privilege of, for example, having a community, particularly, the school that I was in, and having my uncle with me, having extended family, but at the same
Yeah.
time, also just the privilege of having an internet connection or having my experiences with campus journalism and my speech contests. Those things also really taught me to assert myself in this world. But I can imagine how many girls or young kids in general who don't have that those privileges to fight for their own rights or assert their own rights. And that's really led me towards envisioning myself as a lawyer in the future because while I can only do so much for myself, considering that I had to represent myself to assert control over my life and in those circumstances, I'd really want to be that figure for children in the future. But at the same time, considering that I'm now taking up consular and diplomatic affairs. I initially took it as a pre-law course, but as soon as I really grasped what the course was about, um, it also really enlightened me towards the realization that I could tangibly pursue a career in foreign service because while being a lawyer is an honor in and of itself to restore justice, as a diplomat you can slow down or ensure that the societal evils, the social cancers don't take root from the very beginning. And as a diplomat, you can do that by ensuring that the system is designed in such a way that children are not left vulnerable, um, even when they're at an economic and social disadvantage. I'm
For a
sorry.
21, for a 21, for, no, no worries. For a 21-year-old woman, how was your eyes opened to these social political realities of life? I mean, I'm amazed.
Oh,
You're only 21.
I've always took an interest in it because I joined my school newspaper at the age of 10. Oops, sorry. Yeah, I joined I joined my school newspaper at the age of 10, and since then I joined many a press con, and I've been exposed to like feature writing, and I hopped on to radio broadcasting and TV broadcasting contests as well, and that really opened my eyes to how the world is a much bigger place than the four corners of your household or the four corners of your classroom. And at first, I just wanted to be an observer, but considering how impactful just one narrative or one voice can be to shape not just my life, but the lives of many. When you're featuring the greatest people in history, or you're writing an article on leaders or figures that inspire us, it kind of sinks in that behind every collective effort is an individual who took a chance on those things. And I guess that's what really made me open and receptive towards what the world can offer, the good and the bad. But I take it in stride nonetheless.
Ang deep. Ang deep mo. Grabe. Parang there's nothing I can say. Pero alam mo yun, I'm glad that you were able to nurture those interests. Probably had good influences when you were a kid. That's why you were able to foster those interests until you were able to carry it over until your adult life. So, eto, there's a question here. There's a good question coming in from Maria Elsa Pajuring. Miss Annabelle, what is the biggest advice someone gave you and you wanted to follow in order to win?
Ooh, well, I guess the most impactful thing for me as a child is actually um, when I was a kid, my education was also partly financed by um, my, an employer of one of my my family members, and I distinctly remember her because she was just this really tall, statuesque woman who's very graceful, and she also came from a disadvantaged background, but she worked her way upwards. And she told me that, Annabelle, when you dream, you have to dream big and then worry about everything else later. Don't think about the think about the house to get there, but just ask yourself where you want to be and what would you be willing to give in order to be there. And I thought long and hard about that, but dreaming big is something that we take for granted, especially if you come from a position of privilege. But when you're thrust into difficult times and difficulties, dreaming big becomes more of an ideal rather than something we can be practical with. Um, Whether it's choosing between a course that's more practical or more on the passion, or more of like the side of being of your passions, or whether it be what you pursue as a woman. Do you want to be a mom or do you want to be a career woman? I mean, we're confronted with all of those choices in life at some point, but dreaming big will really carry you forwards because you need to understand that the circumstances that you've lived through and the circumstances where you are now don't need to define who you are. And even when people try to impose an identity upon you, saying that you're only going to amount to this because you don't have the right pedigree, or you come from this province, or this dream is just too far out for you to reach, those things will become irrelevant when you know within yourself that as long as you work hard, you can do it. So that's what I've really implanted into my
Yeah,
core the very beginning of my pageant
iba,
journey.
no? So is that how you personally empowered yourself in those years of struggles and hardships? How you're
Well,
able
right off,
to
yeah, well, right off the bat, when I was 15, I had to become financially independent because I was really left to my own devices by then, due to more tragic circumstances. But when, first of all, and practically speaking, real talk, I had to empower myself economically first because, continuing your education isn't exactly a breeze if you don't even have the means to buy a ball pen. Or I mean, it's stuff like that. I mean, people used to tease me in junior high and senior high that, oh, you still use a pencil, or you have such a I have such a fixation with pencils. And the honest answer would be, I honestly couldn't afford to like buy ball pens because at the end of the day, I had a stash of pencils. And I mean, going back to the question, it's just things like that that seem like minuscule things that we can disregard, but in the grand scheme of things and in hindsight, we see that every challenge really shapes you as a person, and it's really up to yourself to be molded by them positively or negatively. I mean,
yeah.
it's
Looking
really
back
just up.
looking back, Annabelle. Of course, you're now in a better off situation compared to 6 years ago when you were 15 years old. Now,
Right.
looking back, how has your past helped you in your achievements so far?
Right. I guess looking back at my past now, as what I've said and continuing on to that, I had to empower myself economically first. So aside from pageantry, I had to help my uncle, cook meals in the morning so we could sell food in the mornings by our street side in our neighborhood, and then throughout junior high and senior high, I had to sell several different kinds of pastries. To schoolmates and even my teachers, they were really supportive, and they ensured that at the end of the day, I'd sell all of those pieces each and every time. And at night, I helped run the barbecue stand that we put up in our neighborhood also. And although when it comes to barbecue, I did more of the accounting when it comes to that. Um, and all those things really shaped me to be the person I am, because with the classism that you face, it's really easy to buy into the narrative that you'll never amount to something or somebody because of who you are. And um, I transcended that. When people try to put me into a box, I think to myself, I'm still alive. I'm still alive and kicking. And the only time I'll ever allow somebody to put me into a box is when I'm dead. Because that's what you do to dead people. You put them in boxes and you bury them. But when you bury me, I really like to think of myself as a seed that grows through those things. And flowers don't bloom if it doesn't rain in the mountains. So that's the attitude that really helped me push myself forwards. Obviously, growth isn't necessarily easy. It's very ugly, um, because you have to confront the reality of where you are. At times, you need to confront the feelings of isolation that you have. You're disadvantaged, you're socially closed off, you're a pariah to some. But eventually, the truth comes out. And as long as you act upon it and pursue it in all things, people will see your worth eventually. Um, and I'd like to think that hopefully through these platforms that um, I've been exposing myself on, I'd really like people to realize their own worth as well, because we really need that, especially with young people. They're so impressionable, and they're so easily led astray. Or uh, we also have this attitude nowadays amongst young people wherein we self-depreciate ourselves or through our humor, but in all seriousness, we tend to internalize these things. We tend to be so cynical about the future, whether it be through the political instability abroad or the existential climate change issue that we still haven't fully addressed. No shade.
Yeah.
It's easy to be cynical about the future, but you just have to
Yes.
pave your way forwards with a positive mind, and just taking the chance on yourself is the first step towards anything.
When I listen to you, you're coming from a place of empowerment where you're not looking for any pittance at all.
Oh, thank you.
No.
I
So,
mean,
yeah,
I'm only
given
sharing parts of my story, um, to really shed light on how you don't need to be limited by anything. I mean, limitations are just you know all in here. They're things that we think about ourselves. But Rene Descartes once said that what was it that he said? I think, therefore I am. And so you can think around problems all the time. You can think about solutions to them. So
yeah. So,
you really shouldn't be
given
limited.
given with everything that you said, if God were to ask you something, if God were to ask you to change something about your past, would you have wanted to change anything about it?
I honestly wouldn't have to change anything about it, because it was through those difficult times that I grew stronger as a person. And it really opened my eyes towards how I could do so much for other people as well. And there are so many people who slip through the cracks of the system. And when you're in a comfortable bubble, you don't necessarily see how easy it is to have your voice robbed away from you. And coming from that vantage point wherein I have witnessed first and foremost how unjust things can be, how justice can be afforded to the rich but not the poor, how the narrative can be stolen away from you based on the numbers rather than the truth behind what you say. I know how hard it is to be in that position, um, but I'd really like to remind people that they can overcome it as long as they reach within themselves and know that they owe it to themselves to overcome such difficulties.
Wow, Annabelle, you're so
Yeah.
inspiring. Wala akong masabi. Ang daming mga messages sa'yo. Let's read some of them before we proceed to my next question. So smart but very humble. Crown-worthy, true. Sabi ni Aniela Cabrera. 'Di ba? There's another one. Your story is so inspiring. Sabi ni Eileen Velasco. You know, there's so many good things being written about you, being said about you. Feeling ko your fan base is really growing. I don't know if you've been realizing that. Pero as I discover and I research more about you, you're not very active on social media. So I wonder, is this a conscious effort or strategy on your part not to lay low
Honestly,
on social media during your candidacy here?
yeah, I don't think there's a strategy behind that because I'm trying to be more active, believe it or not. But I think it's more of an incidental thing, considering how full my plate already is with my academics and how my interests don't tend to be broadcasted on social media. I mean, it's not like, when I read a book or when I read up on things or when I listen to podcasts, it's not necessarily something that I feel the need to broadcast online. And in general, with all of my interests, I've just never really fallen into the habit of um, putting myself out there per se in social media. Though I do understand that there is a certain joy when you share um, things about yourself online. And I really like the engagement that I have from my fans now and just my friends also. I mean, it's really inspiring. It keeps me pumped up to say the least. But I do tend to do that more on private messages. I try to respond as much as I can, but no, there's really no strategy behind that. It's more of like an incidental thing, talaga.
So ultimately, for you, do you think social media is crucial for a candidacy like yours in a pageant like MUP? Is it a ultimately positive or negative thing?
I suppose it is a plus. It's a positive thing because being more active on social media per se would mean that you have more opportunities to like engage with your fans more. Being on Kumu, I found that across the social media platforms, I think I enjoy Kumu the most nowadays because I just get to directly talk to them and pick apart their thoughts as well. But um, going back to it being the be all and end all of pageantry, I don't think that's the case because when they judge you to be the next Miss Universe Philippines, they're looking at your character first and foremost. They're looking for a spokesperson, somebody who can endure uh, and be at her peak through all of those challenges that they have thrown to us and that they will expect us to succeed in the following days. So you don't necessarily need to be a social media star per se, perhaps. It's not necessarily the be all and end all. That's just my 2 cents. I'm sure people would disagree with me, but I just don't feel the pressure to perform on social media per se. But I really look at it as a means to be more open to people, and that's why I want to be more active on it.
Alam mo, grabe, kapag sumagot ka, dire-diretso ang habang makikinig na lang ako sa'yo. Na-jump na lang ako. Alam mo yun, I wonder if you have been a poet in your past life. Kasi you really have a way with words. You really sound so more than eloquent. If is there a term for someone who is more than eloquent and substantive in answering her questions? That's who you are. Grabe. And
You yeah, because in my free time I do actually write poems, um, and I read a lot of
oh,
write poems. So I've never published them online, but maybe along the lines I'll share them with my fans. Who knows?
and I feel like, I feel like your stint here in MUP is really preparing you for your future career in foreign service.
Aptly
I see
so.
the parallel, yeah, I really see the parallelism sa totoo lang. Na alam mo yon na you are so knowledgeable and well-versed in a lot of not just issues, petty issues, but social, economic, or even political issues. Now, I wonder, eto na, what do you think is the most pressing global issue our current generation is facing right now?
Off the top of my head, maybe in general, because could, if you take a look at all the global issues that we're facing, I think it's really rooted in the routine disregard that we have for international law, whether it be territorial disputes or um, issues around respecting one's sovereignty. It really boils down to a routine disregard for international law. I think we've become so complacent and so relaxed, and we've taken peace, these times of peace, for granted. When you take a look at things, kasi, you'll know that the global order that we have now is just very recent, considering that, like, the United Nations, for example, was only uh, propped up after the World War II. That would be like 1945 post or onwards, and we've taken these times of peace for granted, and it's not because, with everything, you don't necessarily need this one diabolical person to succeed, but rather you just need a good host of people to be passive and to allow these things to happen. And I guess with when it comes to dealing with all of the global issues now, we should just go back to becoming more assertive in enforcing international law, because international law is mutually agreed upon by states, and part of that agreement is also an acknowledgement that if you're on the wrong side of the law, you know that you will be held accountable for it. So even ordinary people, you don't necessarily need to be a diplomat to make your voice heard in the international scene, considering that, individuals like um, Malala Yousafzai or Greta Thunberg, they've been
Yeah,
noticed, they've been listened to on an international level simply because they asserted themselves and what they believed in. So it would be a given, um, to hope that states also could be more assertive when it comes to pressing their positions on certain things.
alam mo, yeah, yeah, oo. It's a when you assert some things, you really have to be passionate about it, like how you have been showcasing yourself here. So now I wonder, sabi mo nga, without being a diplomat, you can really, champion these things, talk about these things like Greta Thunberg. So ikaw, tanungin kita ngayon, if you, kung kunyari ikaw si Greta Thunberg, or not her, as just simply Annabelle, do you think, is there something at this point in time that is not right in the world right now that you think needs to be put right? Did you get my question? I'll repeat. Is Do you think there is something that is not right in this world that needs to be put right?
When rights become privileges, um, everything falls into place in a manner that assures people who are pushed or thrusted into the margins simmer in the injustices and tragically and circumstantially become agents of such injustices themselves, and they're trapped into cycles of violence, they're trapped into cycles of poverty. And when we think about the quality of life, we need to make sure that human rights are universally enjoyed. And when things like healthcare, education become privileges that are enjoyed by a few, we're suffering the consequences now actually of having that reality, because you realize that society only works like clockwork when all the parts are in the right place, and when you have human resources being undermined or not developed to their full potential. Everybody, on a societal scale, we all suffer from that, because the loss of opportunity for one person is the loss of an opportunity for a world wherein that person could have been a leader or could have been a pioneer into a field that he or she was passionate about. I think there's a solution, a, a solution encased or locked within each and every individual. And if they don't realize their worth and their society doesn't work towards a fulfilling or achieving uh, the potential that's encased within them, then we lose out on that chance, and we lose out on what they could have contributed. So that's what I would write about the wrongs in this world right now. Rights becoming
Grabe.
privilege.
Yeah. Ah, alam mo, I could not help but liken the industry that you are thriving in right now with what you have just said. Na parang it's being pushed, pageants, I feel like are being pushed back, are being put on the sidelines just because it's already antiquated, obsolete. It's like an antiquated, sorry for my term, dog show. I just read it somewhere of how it is supposed to be for women empowerment nowadays. So I wonder, you know, let's face it, in Western countries, beauty pageants are being looked down. So do you think there will come a time wherein beauty beauty pageants and female empowerment will be inherently compatible?
That's quite interesting for you to note, because as Filipino pageant fans, we don't tend to feel this per se, but I understand where you're coming from, Adam. And from the very get go, that's also part and parcel as to why I really am passionate about pageantry, because women empowerment and pageantry shouldn't be seen as this false dichotomy wherein we have to choose between the two, but they're actually they actually exist um, on one plane, because the moment you assert your womanhood, the moment that you reclaim your power, you and use your voice, use it to inspire others, um, that is already empowerment in and of itself. And understandably, you may not necessarily think about a leader to be, or a visionary person to come into the form of uh, a beauty queen or somebody who is all glammed up or dressed to the nines. But should that be the case, or is that just internalized misogyny making those subconscious thoughts for you? Because when we talk about women empowerment, especially when it comes to like the third wave of feminism, we're already at the cusp of dissecting what intersectionality means. It means that when women make choices, those choices should be seen as valid because the woman made an informed choice to see them as valid. And where I'm going with this is that, for example, I'm a feminist, but at the same time, I'm a beauty queen. And increasing my femininity and embracing that doesn't take away from my substance or my capacity to do good in this world. So why should it be seen as something that undermines how serious people take me, when actually I'm making a dent towards recorrecting how people view femininity and womanhood. I just never understood how it could be seen as night and day when it's just um, it's just two sides of the coin. It's one and the same.
Yeah, because I'm coming from this perspective that um, when we talk about feminism, I thought it's only unique in beauty pageants, but I never realized, it happens in daily life. Like taking the case of, here in the Philippines, I think it's a non-issue already because we've had female presidents, especially when it comes to, na talaga I feel like men and women here in the Philippines are equal in terms of career opportunities. But when it comes to other countries like our world superpower, United States, there seems to be, you know, uh, an anti-female feminism stance happening there because there seems to be a lack of positions for women there, especially in politics. And I don't know if the concept of patriarchy exacerbates this problem, wherein women are less competent and qualified than men when it comes to their thinking over there at that over there in the US. So alam mo yon. So nakikita mo yung disparities.
Right. I mean, I guess when it comes to roadblocks in representation in any career field that you like to pursue, I suppose patriarchy would be one factor as to why, but not in ways that we tend to think about. Um, Obviously, we've allowed women to like pursue the bar, for example, legally speaking, but socially speaking, or economically speaking, that's a different case because for one, you need to contend with um, gender norms, and you need to
Yeah.
overcome gendered expectations of what excellence looks like. Because, for example, as a professional woman, not a hair needs to be out of place, but it's more lax when it comes to men. Um, and economically speaking, for example, when we talk about the gender wage gap, it the patriarchy manifests itself not as um, it doesn't manifest itself directly within that issue. But curiously enough, for example, when you take a look at the gender wage gap, you analyze that women do experience this gap from their early 20s up to their 40s, and then it takes a dip towards more equality or more equity. Oh no, more equal chances, more equal pay rather, when they hit like 45 onwards. And um, when you take a look at those findings, you tend to ask why, or how does this happen? How did this come to be? Is patriarchy uh, evident within this? And the question, or the answer rather, leads you back to how the system is designed. When women are 20 to 40, they tend to have children at those ages, right? And when you have a career, for example, in law, that is highly competitive, very cutthroat, and at the same time has very unforgiving working hours, and you work in a firm that doesn't necessarily offer you maternal leave, which is the case in the US, by the way. They're one of the few countries in the world who don't offer maternal leave. Then it becomes quite clear as to why the gender wage gap exists in the US. For example, it's not necessarily an overt um, anti-female stance, but it's rather a passive thing that happens when the system is designed by men for men. That's just my 2 cents on it, Adam. Um, and this is exactly why I'm pushing for the principle of inclusivity, because we tend to think about things or our problems as solitary cases, but when you take a look at it from a wider perspective, you see that these issues are actually intersectional in nature. They're connected to one
Yeah,
another.
with
Uh,
another.
if you're paid less, like if you're a 30-year-old woman in the United States who is paid less than her male counterparts, it's not because you're incompetent, but it's a result of, for instance, it might be a result of your socioeconomic background. Maybe you're discriminated by the state that you're from, and you're looked down upon because of your educational background or attainment. But also, maybe it's also a result of how the system is designed, professionally speaking, and how the work hours are put into place, but also how there is no policy in the system to assure that you have access to maternal leave. It's a combination of all those things that put you into that corner. So when we think about issues, for me, for my just from my end,
And
I don't want to see them as isolated cases anymore. And I really want to make people realize that they really are interconnected. And so when we tend to solve one problem, we should think about hitting all those birds with
once
stones
so
at the same time to slowly make dents into like the mass entanglement of issues that we face. Just interconnected, you know?
yeah. Yeah, I would want can I still want can I still ask one more question before we wrap this up? I can't believe we've been talking for almost one. Yun nga eh, interconnected eh. It's not just about, feminism. Feeling ko yun nga, may mga underlying problems na hindi
Yes, it's about
that
race.
needs to be tackled. Yeah. And I'm glad that you are espousing inclusivity as your advocacy here in MUPH. So my last question would be, what do you think is the biggest issue about inclusivity or diversity in the world right now, and how can you play a part in solving it?
Well, for me, the most or the hardest thing about pushing for inclusivity would have to be overcoming biases that are either in place due to what you grew up with, or they're in place because of the system that you're currently partaking in. When you feel pressured to conform, even when you know that conformity would mean an unfair trade off between success and your principles, that's what really grinds my gears, and that's what really impedes upon achieving inclusivity. So when we think about inclusivity, we need to think about it as a way or a lens of assessing each situation rather than seeing it as this intangible principle that can or may not be integrated when we see things. I think for me, it's I don't want to tell people what they should do or what they should think about, but I'd rather have people reframe how they see things, how they think about things. So whether it's their own personal demons that they need to overcome, or whether they're dealing with a certain social ill that they want to make a dent in or they want to contribute towards eradicating, if they see things from a vantage point of inclusivity, they'll know that first and foremost, they're not an island in the midst of an ocean of problems, but they can work on it as a collective. They can include people in solutions, whether it be women, LGBTQIA community, indigenous people. When you have these people, talk to them, understand their own individual and unique stories, and take that into account when you craft a solution to a problem, you'll find that the solution becomes more sustainable later on because you're eradicating the possibility of injustices from the get-go. when the common good and when the interests of the public are not in opposition to the interests of the minority in any issue. That's
I
what
get.
really should be at the crux of how we view things,
Yeah, in order
regardless.
to solve. I agree. So, you have to look at you have to analyze it first. Na it's not
Right.
gonna be one fix, quick
Yeah,
fix
it's
to
not
solve it. You really
exactly
have to look at the underlying problem and fix it every step of the way before we finally address everything, all these issues about inclusivity. Kasi ang complex talaga ng problem eh. Hindi lang siya makukuha in an overnight solution or let's say, kahit mag-convene pa ang UN about it. Maraming ang layers of topics that need to be addressed first before we able to make probably a breakthrough
right. And
in that
sometimes
certain
these
topic.
tend to be historical as well. Um, when when we allow these things to happen, and it becomes like a habit, or it becomes like um, a culture around dealing with these certain people or these certain issues. When it becomes an entrenched culture, it's all the more harder to change biases and
Yeah.
get people to hope again, get people to believe that things will change and can change.
My God, Annabelle, you're so deep talaga. Talaga, di ko alam kung anong IQ level mo, pero I'm trying to catch up with your intellect wavelength. My God, pero for the past hour, I've been nothing but impressed with your line of thought. Ang lalim mo, grabe. My God. I really want to hang out with you more para maging more cerebral, more smarter. I don't know, I should read your books as well. My God, ano kami lahat? Can we read some of our comments before we end this interview? There is something with her talaga. Like, if ever siyang mananalo, manifesting, I can imagine her arrival na parang shock at lahat ng mga kalaban niya. Annabelle for the 5th Miss Universe crown. Sabi ni Jet Mercado, may debate ba? Sumakit ang ulo ko. Oh, nasyokot kayo guys. Ako rin, parang na ano ako. Parang, no, kung wala lang akong time limit, Annabelle and I could talk more about this pa. Pero since, baka mapagalitan ako. Annabelle for President, sabi ni Eileen Velasco. You
Of
know,
course, would do for me.
one thing I like about Annabelle is that she's not only lovely but witty as well. Very natural, and I love her light makeup enhancing her beauty. Oh my God, winner na to. Winner na talaga ito. Sabi ni John Kilang, one of the best speakers of this edition. Also, for the MUPH history. Totoo yun. Totoo yun. Diyos ko, Lord. Huwag ka lang din talaga pahawakin ng microphone. Diyos ko, Lord. Talaga. Love, feeling ko talaga,
Nothing
pahawakin ka
to
ng microphone. Tapos yung mga judges, nga na lang sa'yo doon. Ah, parang, ang problema ko na lang siguro, magiging problema na lang namin sa'yo, how can you condense all your thoughts in 30 seconds? Baka yun na lang, napaka-minor. Baka mag-over the limit ka. Grabe, ang deep sobra, sobrang deep. Q&A pa lang na-gets ano? Ngayon ko lang na-gets yung sinabi niya. Go Misamis Oriental. So on that note, maraming maraming salamat Annabelle. Grabe, 1 hour na tayo nag-uusap. I have to cut this na. Otherwise, mapapagalitan ako. But thank you so much for indulging us with your
thank
wit, substance, and charisma talaga. Iba talaga yung charisma mo. Hindi ko alam paano mo nagagawa yan with your effortless beauty and grace. Maraming maraming salamat once again.
you so much. Thank you
I
so much
really
for
had
having me.
I really had a great time getting to know you. So as my last few questions, Kaya ba ng Misamis Oriental manalo ng Miss Universe Philippines crown this year? Why should you be the next Miss Universe Philippines?
Well, I've I should be the next Miss Universe Philippines because I know what it's like to be abandoned, to be pushed to the sidelines, to be isolated, and to have believed that you would never amount to anything or be limited by the circumstances that surround your life. But when we are amidst or stuck at the deepest, darkest night of our lives, that's when we should imbibe or enlight the embers of our soul and believe that when we just spark up the hopes within ourselves and within our community, that's when those things will shine the brightest amidst the darkness. And I would really like to tap into those parts of myself to make people realize that the darkness that they have in their lives now will eventually break into a dawn full of possibilities as long as they believe in themselves and as long as they also pay it forwards when kindness is given to them and manifesting. If I do become the next Miss Universe Philippines, I will gladly tap into that, and it will really help me relate to and deliver uh, and be a spokesperson across many issues uh, that I could really maybe not directly relate to, but empathize with. So there's that. Para itong final Q&A, Adam.
Grabe, lagpas 30 seconds ka, good luck na lang sa'yo.
No,
Mate-technical ka, pero in terms
I
of
have to.
content and substance, you're above the roof talaga. Wow. Oh my gosh. You're crown worthy. My God. My
So,
God. So, maraming salamat again. Can you give a message to all your fans and followers rooting for you to become the next MUP?
well, I really just like to say, from the bottom of my heart, I really just like to say thank you so much for being with me um, from the other day one, or you've been, you know, following me and, interacting with me on Kumo for all these days, or really following my journey. It really means a lot to me when I hear you guys supporting me. And it really helps me be at my best knowing that you guys have my back. So I may not necessarily get the opportunity to reply to each and every one of you because I just have so many PMs day by day. But know that my gratitude is as deep as your support, and I will really do my best to make you guys proud in the very near future.
Alam mo, makuha mo lang yung perfect styling mo sa prelims at finals. Diyos ko, nararamdaman ko talaga. Baka sa'yo mapunta ang corona. Nararamdaman ko. Grabe. Goosebumps.
So
Thank you so much again,
thank you.
Annabelle. You've been such a amazing speaker for the past hour, and I hope you were able. It is in my hope that you were able to inspire not just pageant fans, but a lot of people from all walks of life, given your backstory, your hardships and struggles, and how you were able to overcome all of them at just 21 years old. Beat that. Maraming salamat, Annabelle. Thank you so much to the entire Aces and Queens camp for making this interview possible. Kay Sir Odelen Simpao, thank you so much for making this happen. And Miss Oriental, grabe, kinikilabutan na ako sa inyo. May laban talaga kayo this year. Maraming salamat. Annabelle, stay safe and hydrated. Grabe,
Okay.
enjoy the rest of your evening. Stay safe. Take care. Virtual hugs and
Good.
kisses all the way from my office here in Cubao. Mwah. See you soon! Grabe, I can't wait. Bye!